Hi guys, before we start chapter number 9, let's recall what we learned in chapter number 8. Intense devotion or love of God is the legacy of various kinds of bhakti and Sufi movements that have evolved since the 8th century. The idea that all living things pass through countless cycles of birth and rebirth, performing good deeds and bad, came to be widely accepted. Similarly, the idea that all human beings are not equal, even at birth, gained ground during this period. The belief that social privileges came from birth in a noble family or a high caste was the subject of many learned texts. Many people were uneasy with such ideas and turned to the teachings of the Buddha or the Jainas, according to which it was possible to overcome social differences and break the cycle of rebirth through personal effort. Others felt attracted to the idea of a supreme God who could deliver humans from such bondage if approached with devotion or bhakti. This idea, advocated in the Bhagavad Gita, grew in popularity in the early centuries of the Common Era. Shiva, Vishnu, and Durga as supreme deities came to be worshipped through elaborate rituals. At the same time, gods and goddesses worshipped in different areas came to be identified with Shiva, Vishnu, or Durga. The Puranas also laid down that it was possible for devotees to receive the grace of God regardless of their caste status. The idea of bhakti became so popular that even Buddhists and Jainas adopted these beliefs. The 7th to 9th century saw the emergence of new religious movements led by the Nayanars, saints devoted to Shiva, and Alvars, saints devoted to Vishnu, who came from all castes including those considered untouchable like the Pulayar and the Panars. They were sharply critical of the Buddhists and Jainas and preached ardent love of Shiva or Vishnu as the path to salvation. They drew upon the ideals of love and heroism as found in the Sangam literature, the earliest examples of Tamil literature composed during the early centuries of the Common Era, and blended them with the values of bhakti. Hagiographies or religious biographies of the Alvars and Nayanars were also composed. Shankara, one of the most influential philosophers of India, was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He was an advocate of Advaita, or the doctrine of the oneness of the individual soul and the supreme God, which is the ultimate reality. He taught that Brahman, the only or ultimate reality, was formless and without any attributes. He considered the world around us to be an illusion or maya, and preached renunciation of the world and adoption of the path of knowledge to understand the true nature of Brahman and attain salvation. Ramanuja, born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century, was deeply influenced by the Alvars. According to him, the best means of attaining salvation was through intense devotion to Vishnu. Vishnu, in his grace, helps the devotee to attain the bliss of union with him. He propounded the doctrine of Vishist Advaita, or qualified oneness, in that the soul, even when united with the Supreme God, remained distinct. Ramanuja's doctrine greatly inspired the new strand of bhakti which developed in North India subsequently. Virashaiva movement initiated by Basavana and his companions like Alama Prabhu and Akka Mahadevi. This movement began in Karnataka in the mid 12th century. The Virashaivas argued strongly for the equality of all human beings and against Brahmanical ideas about caste and the treatment of women. They were also against all forms of ritual and idol worship. The saints of Maharashtra. From the 13th to the 17th centuries, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets whose songs in simple Marathi continue to inspire people. The most important among them were Janeshwar, Namdev, Eknath, and Tukaram, as well as women like Sakubai and the family of Chokha Mela who belonged to the untouchable Mahar caste. These saint poets rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of piety, and social differences based on birth. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families, earning their livelihood like any other person while humbly serving fellow human beings in need. A new humanist idea emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. As the famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehta said, they are Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others. A number of religious groups A number of religious groups that emerged during this period criticized the ritual and other aspects of conventional religion and the social order using simple logical arguments. Among them were the Nathpanthis, Siddhacharas, and yogis. They advocated renunciation of the world. To them, the path to salvation lay in meditation on the formless ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practices like yogasanas, breathing exercises, and meditation. These groups became particularly popular among low caste. Their criticism of conventional religion created the ground for devotional religion to become a popular force in northern India. Islam and Sufism. The Sants had much in common with the Sufis, so much so that it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Sufis were Muslim mystics. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion towards all fellow human beings. Islam propagated strict monotheism or submission to one God. It also rejected idol worship and considerably simplified rituals of worship into collective prayers. At the same time, Muslim scholars developed a holy law called Shariat. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. They sought union with God much as a lover seeks his beloved, with a disregard for the world. Like the saint poets, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes and fables, developed around them. Among the great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazali, Rumi, and Sadi. Like the Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis, the Sufis too believed that the heart can be trained to look at the world in a different way. They developed elaborate methods of training using zikr, chanting of a name or sacred formula, contemplation, sama, singing, raqs, dancing, discussion of parables, breath control, etc., under the guidance of a master or peer. Thus emerged the silsilas, a genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method, tariqa of instruction and ritual practice. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan. The Chishti silsila was among the most influential orders. It has a long line of teachers like Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Kaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi, and Banda Nawaz Gishudaras of Gulbarga. They discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessings of the saints in solving their worldly problems, or simply attended the music and dance sessions. The tomb or dargah of a Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of all faiths thronged. The period after the 13th century saw a new wave of the Bhakti movement in North India. This was an age when Islam, Brahmanical, Hinduism, Sufism, various strands of Bhakti, and the Natpant, Siddhas, and Yogis influenced one another. Some of them, like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak, rejected all orthodox religions. Others, like Tulsidas and Surdas, accepted existing beliefs and practices but wanted to make these accessible to all. Tulsidas conceived of God in the form of Rama. Tulsidas' composition, the Ramcharitmanas, written in Awadhi, a language used in eastern Uttar Pradesh, is important both as an expression of his devotion and as a literary work. Surdas was an ardent devotee of Krishna. His composition, compiled in the Sursagara, Surasaravali, and Sahitya Lahari, expressed his devotion. Also contemporary was Shankara Deva of Assam, late 15th century, who emphasized devotion to Vishnu and composed poems and plays in Assamese. He began the practice of setting up namgars, or houses of recitation and prayer, a practice that continues to date. This tradition also included saints like Dadu Dayal, Ravidas, and Mirabai. Mirabai was a Rajput princess married into the royal family of Mewar in the 16th century. Mirabai became a disciple of Ravidas, a saint from a caste considered untouchable. She was devoted to Krishna and composed innumerable bhajans expressing her intense devotion. Her songs also openly challenged the norms of the upper caste and became popular with the masses in Rajasthan and Gujarat. A unique feature of most of the saints is that their works were composed in regional languages and could be sung. They became immensely popular and were handed down orally from generation to generation. Usually, the poorest, most privileged, most deprived communities and women transmitted these songs, often adding their own experiences. So Kabir, who probably lived in the 15th to 16th centuries, was one of the most influential saints. He was brought up in a family of Muslim Julahas or weavers settled in or near the city of Banaras. His ideas from a vast collection of verses called Sakhis and Pads, said to have been composed by him and sung by wandering bhajan singers. Some of these were later collected and preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib, Panchvani and Bijak. Kabir's teachings were based on a complete, indeed vehement, rejection of the major religious traditions. His teachings openly ridiculed all forms of external worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, the preeminence of the priestly classes and the caste system. The language of his poetry was a form of spoken Hindi widely understood by ordinary people. Kabir believed in a formless supreme God and preached that the only path to salvation was through bhakti or devotion. So let's come to Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak 1469 to 1539, he was born at Talwandi, Nankana Sahib in Pakistan. He traveled widely before establishing a center at Kartarpur, Dera Baba Nanak on the river Ravi. A regular worship that consisted of the singing of his own hymns was established there for his followers. Irrespective of their former creed, caste, or gender, his followers ate together in the common kitchen, that is langar. The sacred space thus created by Guru Nanak was known as Dharmshal. It is now known as Gurudwara. Before his death in 1539, Guru Nanak appointed one of his followers as his successor. His name was Lehana, but he came to be known as Guru Angad, signifying that he was a part of Guru Nanak himself. Guru Angad compiled the compositions of Guru Nanak, to which he added his own in a new script known as Gurmukhi. The three successors of Guru Angad also wrote under the name of Nanak, and all of their compositions were compiled by Guru Arjan in 1604. To this compilation were added the writings of other figures like Sheikh Farid, Sant Kabir, Bhagat Namdev, and Guru Tegh Bahadur. In 1706, this compilation was authenticated by his son and successor, Guru Gobind Singh. It is now known as Guru Granth Sahib, the holy scripture of the Sikhs. Guru Nanak's insistence that his followers must be householders and should adopt productive and useful occupation. By the beginning of the 17th century, the town of Ramdaspur, that is Amritsar, had developed around the central Gurudwara called Harmandir Sahib Golden Temple. It was virtually self-governing, and modern historians refer to the early 17th century Sikh community as a state within the state. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir looked upon them as a potential threat, and he ordered the execution of Guru Arjan in 1606. The Sikh movement began to get politicized in the 17th century, a development which culminated in the institution of the Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. The community of the Sikh called the Khalsa Panth became a political entity. The changing historical situation during the 16th and 17th centuries influenced the development of the Sikh movement. He emphasized the importance of the worship of one God. He insisted that caste, creed, or gender was irrelevant for attaining liberation. His idea of liberation was not that of a state of inert bliss, but rather the pursuit of active life with a strong sense of social commitment. He himself used the terms Nam, Dan, and Isnan for the essence of his teaching, which actually meant right worship, welfare of others, and purity of conduct. His teachings are now remembered as Nam Japna, Kirt Karna, and Vant Chakna, which also underline the importance of right belief and worship, honest living, and helping others. Thus, Guru Nanak's idea of equality had social and political implications. This might partly explain the difference between the history of the followers of Guru Nanak and the history of the followers of the other religious figures of the medieval centuries like Kabir, Ravidas, and Dadu, whose ideas were very similar to those of Guru Nanak. So that's all, guys. Let's start chapter number 9. Chapter number 9, The Making of Regional Cultures. One of the commonest ways of describing people is in terms of the language they speak. When we refer to a person as a Tamil or an Oriya, this usually means that he or she speaks Tamil or Oriya and lives in Tamil Nadu or Odisha. We also tend to associate each region with distinct kinds of food, clothes, poetry, dance, music, and painting. Sometimes we take these identities for granted and assume that they have existed from time immemorial. However, the frontiers separating regions have evolved over time and in fact are still changing. Also, what we understand as regional cultures today are often the product of complex processes of intermixing of local traditions with ideas from other parts of the subcontinent. As we will see, some traditions appear specific to some regions, others seem to be similar across regions, and yet others derive from older practices in a particular area, thus take a new form in other regions. The Cheras and the development of Malayalam. Let us begin by looking at an example of the connection between language and reason. The Chera kingdom of Mahodayapuram was established in the 9th century in the southwestern part of the peninsula, part of present-day Kerala. It is likely that Malayalam was spoken in this area. The rulers introduced the Malayalam language and script in their inscriptions. In fact, this is one of the earliest examples of the use of a regional language in official records in the subcontinent. So figure number 1, this is an early Kerala inscription composed in Malayalam. At the same time, the Cheras also drew upon Sanskritic traditions. The temple theatre of Kerala, which is traced to this period, borrowed stories from the Sanskrit epics. The first literary works in Malayalam, dated to about the 12th century, are directly indebted to Sanskrit. Interestingly enough, a 14th century text, the Leela Tilakam, dealing with grammar and poetics, was composed in Manipravalam, literally diamonds and corals, referring to the two languages, Sanskrit and the regional language. Rulers and religious traditions, the Jagannath cult. So this is figure number 2, the icons of Balabhadra, Subhadra and Jagannath, palm leaf manuscript. So this is a palm leaf manuscript. In other regions, regional cultures grew around religious traditions. The best example of this process is the cult of Jagannatha, literally Lord of the world, a name of Vishnu at Puri, Orissa. Today, the local tribal people make the wooden image of the deity, which suggests that the deity was originally a local god who was later identified with Vishnu. In the 12th century, one of the most important rulers of the Ganga dynasty, Anantavarman, decided to erect a temple for Purushottama Jagannatha of Puri. Jagannatha at Puri. Subsequently, in 1230, King Anangabhima III dedicated his kingdom to the deity and proclaimed himself as the deputy of the god. this figure number 3, this is the Jagannath temple in Puri, which is there in Orissa. As the temple gained an importance as a center of pilgrimage, its authority in social and political matters also increased. All those who conquered Orissa, such as the Mughals, the Marathas, and the English East India Company, attempted to gain control over the temple. They felt that this would make their rule acceptable to the local people. So this figure number 4, this is Prince Raj Singh of Bikaner. The Rajputs and traditions of heroism. In the 19th century, the region that constitutes most of present-day Rajasthan was called Rajputana by the British. While this may suggest that this was an area that was inhabited only or mainly by Rajputs, this is only partly true. There were and are several groups who identify themselves as Rajputs in many areas of northern and central India. And of course, there are several peoples other than Rajputs who live in Rajasthan. However, the Rajputs are often recognized as contributing to the distinct culture of Rajasthan. These cultural traditions were closely linked with the ideals and aspirations of rulers. From about the 8th century, most of the present-day state of Rajasthan was ruled by various Rajput families. Prithviraj was one such ruler. These rulers cherished the ideal of the hero who fought valiantly, often choosing death on the battlefield rather than face defeat. Stories about Rajput heroes were recorded in poems and songs which were recited by specially trained minstrels. These preserved the memories of heroes and were expected to inspire others to follow their example. Ordinary people were also attracted by these stories, which often depicted dramatic situations and a range of strong emotions: royalty, friendship, love, valor, anger, etc. Did women find a place within these stories? Sometimes they figure as the cause for conflicts, as men fought with one another to either win or protect women. Women are also depicted as following their heroic husbands in both life and death. There are stories about the practice of sati, or the immolation of widows on the funeral pyre of their husbands. So those who followed the heroic ideal often had to pay for it with their lives. So this is map 1, reasons discussed in this chapter. So these are the reasons which we'll be discussing: Bangladesh, West Bengal, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh and Kerala. So beyond regional frontiers, the story of Kathak. If heroic traditions can be found in different regions in different forms, the same is true of dance. Let us look at the history of one dance form, Kathak, now associated with different parts of North India. The term Kathak is derived from Katha, a word used in Sanskrit and other languages for story. The Kathaks were originally a caste of storytellers in temples of North India who embellished their performances with gestures and songs. Kathak began evolving into a distinct mode of dance in the 15th and 16th centuries with the spread of the Bhakti movement. The legends of Radha Krishna were enacted in folk plays called Rasa Leela, which combined folk dance with the basic gestures of the Kathak storytellers. Under the Mughal emperor and their nobles, Kathak was performed in the court where it acquired its present features and developed into a form of dance with a distinct style. Subsequently, it developed in two traditions or gharanas, one in the court of Rajasthan, Jaipur, and the other in Lucknow. Under the patronage of Wajid Ali Shah, the last Nawab of Awadh, it grew into a major art form. By the third quarter of the 19th century, it was firmly entrenched as a dance form not only in these two regions but in the adjoining areas of present-day Punjab, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir, Bihar, and Madhya Pradesh. Emphasis was laid on intricate and rapid footwork, elaborate costumes, as well as on the enactment of stories. Kathak, like several other cultural practices, was viewed with disfavor by most British administrators in the 19th and 20th centuries. However, it survived and continued to be performed by courtesans and was recognized as one of 6 classical forms of dance in the country after independence. So, classical dances. The question of defining any art form as classical is quite often complicated, as we define something as classical if it deals with a religious. Do we define something as classical if it deals with a religious theme, or do we consider it classical because it appears to acquire a great deal of skill acquired through long years of training, or is it classical because it is performed according to rules that are laid down and variations are not encouraged? These are questions we need to think about. It is worth remembering that many dance forms that are classified as folk also share of the characteristics several of the characteristics considered typical of classical forms. So, while the use of the term classical may suggest that these forms are superior, this need not always be literally true. Other dance forms that are recognized as classical at present are Bharatnatyam, Tamil Nadu, Kathakali, Kerala, Orissa, Kuchipudi, Andhra Pradesh, Manipur. So this figure number 6, Kathak dancers, a court painting. Now painting for patrons, the tradition of miniatures. Figure number 7, this is Akbar resting during a hunt. Mughal miniature, this is a miniature. Then painting for patrons, the tradition of miniatures. Another tradition that developed in different ways was that of miniature painting. Miniatures, as their very name suggests, are small-sized paintings generally done in watercolor on cloth or paper. The earliest miniatures were on palm leaves or wood. Some of the most beautiful of these found in western India were used to illustrate Jaina text. The Mughal emperors Akbar, Jahangir, and Shahjahan patronized highly skilled painters who primarily illustrated manuscripts containing historical accounts and poetry. These were generally painted in vibrant colors and portrayed court scenes, scenes of battle or hunting, and other aspects of social life. They were often exchanged as gifts. So they were often exchanged as gifts and were viewed only by an exclusive few, the emperor and his close associates. With the decline of the Mughal Empire, many painters move out of the court of the emerging regional states. Okay, with the decline of the Mughal Empire, many painters moved out to the courts of the emerging regional states. As a result, Mughal artistic taste influenced the regional courts of the Deccan and the Rajput courts of Rajasthan. At the same time, they retained and developed their distinct characteristics. Portraits of rulers and court scenes came to be painted following the Mughal example. Besides, themes from mythology and poetry were depicted at centers such as Mewar, Jodhpur, Bundi, Kota, and Kisangarh. Another reason that attracted miniature paintings was the Himalayan foothills around the modern day state of Himachal Pradesh. By the late 17th century, okay, before we read this, let's see the paintings. So, figure number 8, Maharana Ram Singh II playing Holi, Rajput miniature, and this is in Kota. So, figure number 9, Krishna, Radha, and her companion, Pahari miniature, Kangra. By the late 17th century, this region had developed a bold and intense style of miniature painting called Basoli. So, it's called Basoli. The most popular text to be painted here was Bhanudatta Rasamanjari. Nadir Shah's invasion and the conquest of Delhi in 1739 resulted in the migration of Mughal artists to the hills to escape the uncertainties of the plains. Here, they found ready patrons, which led to the founding of the Kangra school of painting. By the mid-18th century, the Kangra artists developed a style which breathed a new spirit into miniature painting. The source of inspiration was the Vaisnavite traditions, soft colors including cool blues and greens and a lyrical treatment of themes distinguished Kangra painting. Remember that ordinary women and men painted as well on pots, walls, floors, clothes, works of art that have occasionally survived, unlike the miniatures that were carefully preserved in palaces for centuries. So let's come to Bengal. And this figure number 10 is a page from a palm leaf manuscript of the earliest Bengali Ramayana. The growth of a regional language. As we saw at the outset, we often tend to identify regions in terms of the language spoken by the people. So we assume that people in Bengal always spoke Bengali. However, what is interesting is that while Bengali is now recognized as a language derived from Sanskrit, early Sanskrit text mid 1st millennium BCE suggest that the people of Bengal did not speak Sanskrit languages. How then did the new language emerge? New language emerged. From the 4th, 3rd centuries BCE, commercial ties began to develop between Bengal and Magadha, South Bihar, which may have led to the growing influence of Sanskrit. During the 4th century, the Gupta rulers established political control over North Bengal and began to settle Brahmanas in these areas. Thus, the linguistic and cultural influence from the mid-Ganga valley became stronger. In the 7th century, the Chinese traveler Xuanzang observed that languages related to Sanskrit were in use all over Bengal. From the 8th century, Bengal became the center of a regional kingdom under the Pallas. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, Bengal was ruled by sultans who were independent of the rulers in Delhi. In 1586, when Akbar conquered Bengal, it formed the nucleus of the Bengal Suba. While Persian was the language of administration, Bengali developed as a regional language. In fact, by the 15th century, the Bengali group of dialects came to be united by a common literary language based on the spoken language of the western part of the region, now known as West Bengal. Thus, although Bengali is derived from Sanskrit, it passed through several stages of evolution. Also, a wide range of non-Sanskrit words derived from a variety of sources including tribal languages, Persian, and European languages have become a part of modern Bengali. Early Bengali literature may be divided into two categories. One indebted to Sanskrit and the other independent of it. The first includes translations of the Sanskrit epics, the Mangala Kavyas, literally auspicious poems dealing with local deities, and bhakti literature such as the biographies of Chaitanya Deva, the leader of the Vaisnava Bhakti movement. So, early Bengali literature may be divided into two categories, one indebted to Sanskrit and the other independent of it. The first includes translations of the Sanskrit epics. The Mangala Kavya, which literally means auspicious poems dealing with local deities, and bhakti literature such as the biographies of Chaitanya Dev, the leader of the Vaishnava Bhakti movement. The second includes Nath literature, such as the songs of Menamati and Gopi Chandra, stories concerning the worship of Dharma Thakur, and fairy tales, folk tales, and ballads. Menamati, Gopi Chandra, and Dharma Thakur. The Naths were ascetics who engaged in a variety of yogic practices. This particular song, which was often enacted, described how Menamati, a queen, encouraged her son Gopi Chandra to adopt the path of asceticism in the face of a variety of obstacles. Dharma Thakur is a popular regional deity, often worshipped in the form of a stone or a piece of wood. The texts belonging to the first category are easier to date, as several manuscripts have been found indicating that they were composed between the late 15th and mid 18th centuries. Those belonging to the second category circulated orally and cannot be precisely dated. They were particularly popular in eastern Bengal, where the influence of Brahmanas was relatively weak. Pirs and temples. So pir, a Persian word meaning a spiritual guide. From the 16th century, people began to migrate in large numbers from the less fertile western Bengal to the forested and marshy areas of southeastern Bengal. As they moved eastwards, they cleared forest and brought the land under rice cultivation. Gradually, local communities of fisher folk and sifting cultivators, often tribals, merged with the new communities of peasants. This coincided with the establishment of Mughal control over Bengal, with their capital in the heart of the eastern delta at Dhaka. Officials and functionaries received land and often set up mosques that served as centers of religious transformation in these areas. The early settlers sought some order and assurance in the unstable conditions of the new settlements. These were provided by community leaders who also functioned as teachers and adjudicators and were sometimes ascribed with supernatural powers. People referred to them with affection and respect as peers. This term included saints or Sufis and other religious personalities, daring colonizers and deified soldiers, various Hindu and Buddhist deities, and even animistic spirit. So what is meant by animism? Animism, attribution of living soul to plants, inanimate objects, and natural phenomena. The cult of peers became very popular, and their shrines can be found everywhere in Bengal. Bengal also witnessed a temple building spree from the late 15th century, which culminated in the 19th century. We have seen that temples and other religious structures were often built by individuals or groups who were becoming powerful, who were becoming powerful to both demonstrate their power and proclaim their piety. Many of the modest brick and terracotta temples in Bengal were built with the support of several low social groups such as the Kolu, oil pressures, and the Kansari bell metal workers. The coming of the European trading companies created new economic opportunities. Many families belonging to these social groups availed of these. As their social and economic position improved, they proclaimed their status through the construction of temples. So let's see the new figures. Figure number 11, that's the left one, is a double roofed thatched hut, and figure number 12, which is in the right side, is a four roofed temple with a tower. Then we have figure number 13. So this is a Krishna with gopis, terracotta plaque from the Shyamaraya temple. So this is Krishna with gopis, terracotta plaque from the Shyamaraya temple, Vishnupur. When local deities once worshipped in thatched huts in villages gained the recognition of the Brahmanas, their images began to be housed in temples. The temples began to copy the double-roofed dochala or four-roofed chochala structure of the thatched huts. Remember the Bangla dome in chapter 5. This led to the evolution of the typical Bengali style in temple architecture. In the comparatively more complex four-roofed structure, four triangular roofs placed on the four walls move up to converge on a curved line or a point. So, in the comparatively more complex four-roofed structure, four triangular roofs placed on the four walls move up to converge on a curved line or a point. Temples were usually built on a square platform. So the temples were usually built on a square platform. The interior was relatively plain, but the outer walls of many temples were decorated with paintings, ornamental tiles, or terracotta tablets. In some temples, particularly in Vishnupur in the Bankura district of West Bengal, such decorations reached a high degree of excellence. Fish as food. So this figure, fish being dressed for domestic consumption. Terracotta plaque from the Veshalakshi temple, Arambagh. So traditional food habits are generally based on locally available items of food. Bengal is a riverine plain which produces plenty of rice and fish. Understandably, these two items figure prominently in the menu of even poor Bengalis. Fishing has always been an important occupation, and Bengali literature Bengali literature contains several references to fish. What is more, terracotta plaques. So we find terracotta plaques on the walls of temples and viharas, that is Buddhist monasteries, and they depict scenes of fish being dressed and taken to the market in baskets. So Brahmanas were not allowed to eat non-vegetarian food. But the popularity of fish in the local diet made the Brahmanical authorities relax this prohibition for the Bengal Brahmanas. The Brihad Dharma Purana, a 13th century Sanskrit text from Bengal, permitted the local Brahmanas to eat certain varieties of fish. So the emergence of nation states in Europe. Till the 18th century, people in Europe saw themselves as subjects of an empire, such as the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or members of a church, such as the Greek Orthodox Church. But from the late 18th century, people also began to identify themselves as members of a community that spoke a common language, such as French or German. By the early 19th century, in Romania, school textbooks began to be written in Romanian rather than in Greek, and in Hungary, Hungarian was adopted as the official language instead of Latin. These and other similar developments created the consciousness among the people that each linguistic community was a separate nation. This feeling was strengthened by the movements for Italian and German unification in the late 19th century. So let's match the following. So let's match the following. Number 1 is Anantavarman. So it's Orissa. Then Jagannath, Puri. Then Mahodayapuram, Kerala. Then Leela Tilakam, it's Kerala. Then Mangala Kavya, Bengal. Miniature, Kangra. So that's all guys. See you in my next video. Bye.